Ciao ragazzi, Luca LaPorta here, co-owner of the Milan Guys, and this is the third episode of the Milan Guys podcast. We were going to do it on Monday right after the game, but, we got busy with life and stuff, so we postponed it to Wednesday, but hey, we're here. So, we got a lot to talk about here today. I'm Luca LaPorta, and the co-founder, Mike, he's here. Mike, how's it going?
What's up?
Hey, and we have a special guest from Serie A Sit Down, if you haven't heard it yet. Frank, how's it going, man?
I'm doing great, but you can freely admit that you needed a 3-day cooling off period after what happened Sunday. You don't have to lie and say that's why you didn't do the show on Monday.
No, that's very true. It was that was a tough match to say the least. I mean,
yeah,
not really much. Like there's no way of making it sugarcoating it. That's for sure. You know what, guys? So let's get right into it. 4-1 loss to Roma at the San Siro on Sunday. My take from it is we didn't capitalize. We had a few chances in the first half, didn't capitalize on them. A couple of errors on the Dzeko goal, the first Dzeko goal, really nice goal, give and go with Mo Salah. But, Vagnoni chested the ball down, and we just talked about that before we started live. And I'm pretty sure it was De La Feu who lost the body battle. He's fighting for the ball. He lost it. So, mental errors on the 2-0 goal. Mattia De Sciglio was absolutely nowhere to be found. He didn't even jump for the ball off a corner set piece. We got back into it. Mario Pasalic off a header. Actually off a nice flick on from Lucas Ocampos.
Shocker.
Shocking. But it was a nice flick on from Ocampos, and Pasalic got us back in the game. The San Siro was roaring. Everybody thought we were going to come back. We're a second half team, and we had a chance. But right after, unfortunately, right after we scored, written in the stars, Stefan El-Shaarawy scores the San Siro. Come on, guys. You knew it was going to happen. You knew El-Shaarawy was going to score. Right when he came on for Perotti, I'm like, oh, crap.
I even think I tweeted about it, too. I'm like, all this game needs is an El-Shaarawy goal, and
it'll
be hauled.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then Paletta got a red card and conceded a penalty. You know what? I'm not really sure in a 3-1 game that's a red card and a penalty. I think it's a little harsh.
I don't think it really mattered at that point.
It didn't really matter. No, it didn't. Whatever. Okay, so
it's Gabriel Paletta. I mean, he's a red card. He's a red card waiting to happen, and I think referees in Serie A by habit just pull out the red card whenever it's him.
Well, I think referees just pull out the red card whenever they feel like it because they're bored. This is terrible officiating. Okay, so let's start with Mike. So, Mike, what's your take? First thoughts. What's your take on the game?
I'm not gonna lie. From our second podcast where we're previewing this game, I said that I believe that they were gonna come out fighting a little bit stronger, like having something to prove. But unfortunately, I was proven wrong, and they came out completely flat, especially in the first half. And you kind of knew the game was gonna go downhill, especially not in our way after that first Dzeko goal and the first 10 minutes that happened. Already that is a big sign that the game's not going to go well, and especially them capitalizing on another goal. I know we're not a first half team, but that was a really bad first half. Just nothing was going on, not expecting much, especially from this team now, especially from a midfield point of view, but it was kind of sad just watching it, just seeing us getting outplayed. And the second half, we started picking up a little bit. I was gaining a little bit of hope, especially after that goal by Pasalic. I was thinking, okay, you know what, I could see us tying it, being at home, to around the 70th, 80th minute, we can do it. And then just right after El-Shaarawy scored, and I just put the dagger in the game. So I was pretty disappointed just because I thought we were going to come up fighting a little bit more. I didn't expect to win just because, especially like we mentioned, Roma coming off a derby loss, those are always something that are motivating for a team to capitalize on the next game. So I knew it'd be tough, but I didn't think we were going to come out that flat and that unprepared and looking like we were playing away. Like we were at home, especially in a big game like that, you should be charged up and ready to go out fighting. But it looked like Roma were the home team. So yeah, it was a bit disappointing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree 100%. It was it was a game where you think to yourself, okay, Roma has more quality than we do. There's no doubt, especially with Bonaventura, Romagnoli out. And I just thought, maybe we'll just put in a great performance, fighting spirit, and keep up with them, just what we did with Juventus all season, right? But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Roma's quality again, and when you lose, especially the Derby della Capitale, when you get killed by Lazio, you knew they were going to come out fighting. So, yeah. Frank, opinions? What do you think of the lineup? What do you think? What are your thoughts?
This team desperately misses Alessio Romagnoli right now.
Yeah, very.
First and foremost. I mean, I think that anytime we are pairing Gabriel Paletta and Christian Zapata at the heart of the defense, we're in a lot of trouble. And that's saying that with having a world-class goalkeeper, because let's face it, Gigi Donnarumma is world-class. Had it not been for Donnarumma, Roma win 10-1 on Sunday.
He was absolutely fantastic.
And he was probably the only bright spot in what was just a very rough overall performance. But I think that, this has had to be expected of Milan here over the last few weeks. And let me just give you some thoughts. This is a watered down team. It's a watered down team because of the change of ownership. A change of ownership doesn't want to be saddled with players with ridiculously expensive contracts and they're underachievers, and when are we going to sell them? When are we going to be able to move on from them and all this other stuff? So, we're stuck with loanees. We're stuck with guys that, we got on the cheap, and the team is now playing accordingly. When you take an Alessio Romagnoli out of the lineup, the defense is just beyond bad. Where's Mattia DeCilio's head right now? Does he want to go to Juventus next season, or he's getting the captain's armband? He's being trusted to be a leader of this team. Which is it for him? There are times where I watch him and I say, okay, we can't expect Paolo Maldini, but we should expect somebody serviceable, and he gives that. But then there are games like he put up here on Sunday. Deulofeu started brightly when he came over on loan, but he's tapered off. To me, he's dribbling in pace, and he really doesn't do much else.
No, you're right. I completely agree. 100% agree.
And as far as the strikers, Carlos Bacca is lately, over the last few weeks, he's a man in cement boots, and that's why he doesn't start anymore. At least with Gianluca Lapadula, you get some work ethic, but his hold-up play isn't there. There's just all sorts of problems with this Milan team, and we haven't even talked about the midfield yet.
No, I know, you're right. And you know what? Injuries doesn't help either. Unlucky. The season went down the drain right when Giacomo Bonaventura got injured in January.
Mm-hmm.
Because he changed the whole landscape, right? He would have dropped down to the midfield, Deulofeu left wing, Suso right wing. That would have been a good combination. But now it forces random guys like Bertolacci, random midfielders to drop in because that spot's left open now. But with Bonaventura being out, there's no midfielder that can take a defender on one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an issue. You have to have a midfielder who can take a defender one-on-one, who can change the landscape of your team, who can put a guy on, like, who can make a defender uneasy and make a through ball. Lure defenders into him, make a through ball.
They're trying to force that with Deulofeu, but what's his move?
He doesn't have a move. He
wants to run past people. There's no change of direction to what he does.
No, there's not. That's why he's got a counter, but
almost every time he's just running to the end line, and what's left to do is just desperately cross it into the area, and it's 9 times out of 10, and even 99 times out of 100, it's just an inaccurate ball that's just lumped into the middle,
and they just head it out and then rinse and repeat.
Yep.
And you know what? It's again, injuries are killer. From a tactical standpoint, not having Romagnoli in the lineup does damage a lot of the build-up play that happens with Montella's side. Romagnoli is always the guy who takes the ball and makes the first pass and breaks the line. He makes the pass through the gap.
Mm-hmm.
He'll make the pass through the gap to a midfielder. this starts to play. There's many times that like if I really wanted to, I can pull up. Actually, Matt Santangelo, he was on the podcast a few weeks ago. He actually did a video for at Breaking the Line, his Twitter account, of Romagnoli, how he finds gaps and stuff, and that's kind of the modern defender now, like Bonucci, right? You find gaps, and that's what Romagnoli does. That's what he does really well, and we really miss him with Paletta and Paletta and Zapata. They're not terrible center backs. They look way better with Romagnoli beside them.
Mm-hmm.
So. Again, injuries are killer. Again, I tweeted this yesterday. It seems like Romagnoli, every single big game we have, Romagnoli's hurt for. I don't understand what's going on. It seems like every big game, Roma both times, Inter the one time, Juve the one game for Coppa Italia he was out. But it's just weird. Why are these guys so injury prone? Like it's pretty annoying, but. You can't really control that. But, it's tough because Roma did have a healthy lineup and, it's a relatively strong lineup. And we can all agree.
Well, I think if you guys look at this, and this winless run for Milan, and obviously a lot of courage to come back and draw Inter, but you look at, and we talked about this on our Serie A pod, Empoli at home, Crotone away, and then, this Roma game, these three games. You have a watered-down team playing against three teams that are all fighting for something right now. Mm-hmm. Empoli was fighting for survival. On another day, Milan win that game running away the way they played.
Of course.
No shame in it. I mean, they ran into an all-timer of a performance by Skorupski.
Oh, my gosh. He was fantastic.
Yeah. And Crotone, it's just one of those weird things. They beat Inter at home, and they're fighting for their survival, and they weren't going to be an easy opponent. And then it all came to a head. You've got a Roma that's trying to fight for an automatic Champions League berth and not having to deal with the playoff.
Yeah, because they're a bunch of chokers, so they'll probably lose anyways in the qualifying round.
Right. So your comment about Paletta, he started the season pretty well.
For sure.
But he's at that. He's 30 now, and he's at the point in his playing career where I don't think he can physically sustain a 38-game season anymore. No. And the rigors that go with it. So what you're seeing with him is you're seeing a lot of recklessness. You're seeing a lot of bad challenges. You're seeing a lot of mistimed challenges that are leading to yellows and reds. He's not a regular everyday center back. With Christian Zapata. He's a guy that has a complete lack of understanding of what positioning is, and he tries to make up for it with his pace. Well, guess what? He's 30 now too. That pace isn't going to be there. That pace isn't going to be there forever. He's not going to be able to make up for his mistakes every time.
He doesn't look 30 years old though. It's kind of weird.
It is very weird.
He doesn't look 30 years old. It's kind of odd, but yeah, no, exactly. And I don't know if you guys seen Zapata's Pepsi commercial. Bevioy, you seen it?
I think I'll pass.
Yeah, I
got done with Pepsi commercials after what's her name?
Kendall Jenner.
Kendall Jenner. It was like, hey, if there's any problems in the world, just give him a Pepsi. It'll be fine. Any issues, a Pepsi can cure it. No, it was I'll have to link it on the Milan guys. It was the picture. I don't know. You haven't seen the video of Zapata dancing in the video. That's the Pepsi commercial. It's him saying with a Pepsi saying "Bevioy," which it means drink up or whatever. I don't know. It's funny, but yeah. And Zapata, I don't even hate Zapata or Paletta that much. Paletta, again, he was amazing. I remember I told my friends Paletta's the guy. He's the guy right now. It's Paletta, Romagnoli. And whatever, but you know what? We haven't seen. I'm actually disappointed because I want to see more of Gustavo Gomez. When Gustavo Gomez played, he's been pretty good. He never loses an aerial duel. Never. He wins every single header. I think against Dzeko, he would have won that header.
The problem with Gustavo Gomez at this point, and I think it's been amplified in the games that he's actually appeared in, while he has some defensive qualities to him, just as an individual defender, tackling, winning aerial battles, he's got all of that. He's got all of that to him. He shows that when he plays for his national team at Paraguay. He is the epitome of a defender that, is in his first season playing in Italy, and it's a totally different game from a positioning and a tactical standpoint, number one. Number two, what Montella is demanding of his defenders and trying to be able to play out of the back. These are areas of his game that he's just not there yet. He's raw, to make a long story short.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Mike, what do you think about Gustavo Gomez for what you
I
see?
completely agree. I think he should be getting a little more of an opportunity to express himself and what he is able to do, because it's not like he's a bad player. And at this point in the season and this point in our roster, I think anyone in a sense can have a chance, just because we don't have like a solidified starting 11 or a guy who's solidified at this position. So in a sense, it's mumbo jumbo. You're just throwing everyone out there and hope for the best. So at this point, I think he does deserve a chance. I agree with his aerial duels comparison, but I also agree with what Frank was saying, that coming into everyone who comes to the city, whether they're a defender, I notice, or an attacker, they always mention how it's more of a defensive league. Like, positioning is different. It's much harder to score, much harder to defend. So I think from that perspective, I think it is fair to say that he is raw and, needs time to adjust. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to adjust to a new league when you're sitting on the bench.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
From that point of view, I think he should be getting more of an opportunity. But at the same time, I think Montella kind of rolls with Zapata and Paletta a little more, just because I guess they're more adapted to the Italian league, which is a fair understanding. But at the same time, I think at this point in the season you kind of just want to try out what guys will give it their all at this point, since everyone seems to be giving up. So you can see for next year who's willing and who you'd want to keep, because there's obviously a lot of dead wood that needs to be get rid of, and maybe Gustavo Gomez is one of those guys you don't mind keeping for next year.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you know what? I met when I was in Cuba on vacation in the summer. I met a guy from Argentina. He's an Argentinian guy, big soccer fan. I have him on Twitter and stuff. And he when we signed Gomez, he actually DM'd me and he said, I guess he saw some of my retweet or something. He DM'd me and he said because he played in the Argentinian league, right? Gustavo Gomez. He said Gomez is a really good player. He said they called him the Rock around here. He's a defensive rock. So I'm like, okay, great. Like, if he's a defensive rock there, he's got to be at least decent. But again, we haven't really seen that much of him, right? I want to see more of him, and I'm hoping that have we seen a Romagnoli Gomez pairing? I don't think we have at all, right?
I want to say one game.
Yeah.
Okay, one game, and could any of you even say what game it was?
No, I think it was so long ago. I think it was one of those games where Zapata was injured or something, and
yeah, I know.
It was in the middle of the season before Christmas.
I know what game it was. We saw it was the second game of the season against Napoli.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You're right.
It was when Paletta got the BS red card in the first Torino game. I remember when Belotti freaking pulled on Paletta's jersey and pulled Paletta's jersey off going down, and Paletta got the red card and the penalty. That was so BS. But and Paletta was suspended for the next game, so we saw Romagnoli and Gomez. But that match we lost 4-2. That was because of terrible fullbacks. I remember that game. That was because of Abate didn't realize that Mertens cut on his right foot every single time, and DeScilio didn't realize that he has to mark his man.
Abate out of position defensively. Gee.
But you know what, Frank?
Does it?
Abate is underrated, because think about it, Frank. Ever since Abate got injured, how many games have we won?
We haven't won a lot.
No, exactly, right? And it's weird. It's weird that Abate, he bleeds red and black, right? He loves the club. He loves it. Yeah. You can just tell. But he's obviously lost what he was in 2012. But maybe he adds something that we don't really see, some intangibles, because we haven't won after he got injured against Sassuolo, right? I think we only have one win after that, 1 or 2 wins.
I think it's more of just like a leadership kind of thing with the armband and stuff.
He does.
From an actual tactical and like soccer kind of like view, I don't think he's been adding that much, especially since none of our fullbacks can cross to save their lives. But if you want to talk about intangibles and stuff like that, I think one underestimated thing that he has about him is that he's a great leader in comparison to someone like a DeScilio or Montolivo, who wear the armband, who don't really give their all in terms of wearing the armband for the club. So I'll give him that. But in terms of actual tacticalness, all their fullbacks are pretty much waste, in my opinion. So wouldn't really pinpoint our recent struggles to like an Abate. I'd obviously pinpoint it more to like a Bonaventura, something like that. But
More relevant midfield.
Exactly. So,
I mean, Mike,
Yeah.
your point on the captaincy, I mean, I'll agree with you on DeCilio. I'm not so sure I can agree on Montolivo anymore. There was a time where I would. But since the injury, there have been demonstrations by the players of getting behind him. When we at the time when Yang scoring his goal and getting out the Montolivo jersey, and then when they won the Supercopa, having him lift the trophy. So maybe he doesn't do it on the pitch, but there's a respect for him in the dressing room. I mean, I'm going to have a blog coming out about restructuring this Milan team, and I think Montolivo stays in this team and still is going to be the captain, but it's going to be captain by title, where he's
on the field.
The new Massimo Ambrosini, where
Oh.
he's got everyone's respect in the dressing room, but he's going to be a rotation guy when it comes to picking a team.
I wouldn't mind if he was in
I
the
agree
club.
with
I
that.
don't
I agree
care
with
if he's
that
at the
statement.
club. Like he's not like a freaking. He's not the problem. If he's in the club and comes on to maybe even close out a game or something like that. Like I don't. Who cares? That's fine. I don't care.
I completely agree with that. I agree with that statement, and you are right. He does have quite a bit of respect throughout that locker room. I will give you that as well. I think my point of view is, because I completely agree with what you were saying. I think like, especially being spoiled with so many great captains at this team.
Yeah.
I think like he's not the guy, but I like how you put into perspective as an Ambrosini kind of guy who's just well respected. If he says something, people will listen, kind of thing. But he's not officially the captain. Especially, I like how you said he'd be like a rotation player. Like you come on the 60th, 70 minute, maybe he can change the game, or maybe we're up a little bit. Give a little guidance to guys like Locatelli who are young, looking for guidance and stuff like that. So yeah, I completely agree, and I have no problem keeping him if he's going to be more of a rotation player. But I think if we're going to keep him and he's going to be starting, maybe take over Locatelli's spot or something like that, then I kind of have a problem with it. But or else, I don't mind it that much.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay. You know what? We've already been talking about for 20 minutes. Let's go to. There's been a lot of questions with a lot of people are saying that Montella should. I don't know. I don't agree with it, but a lot of people are blaming Montella for all this, and I think we wouldn't even be in the sixth spot if it wasn't for Montella. But Montella's usage of players for the Roma match, a lot of people said that, and of course you don't understand. Milan fans, they're the kings of second guessing. If we would have won the match against Roma, they would have been like, "Oh, what a lineup! A great lineup from Montella." But when we lose the match, oh, we could have this, could have like, you know what? It's second guessing. You don't like woulda, coulda, shoulda. You don't know what's gonna happen, right? You could put your best lineup out there and still lose 4-1. Like it's not. Like, I don't know. What did you like here? Mike, let's go with you first. What do you think about just the lineup in general against Roma? Do you think there should have been any changes to it?
At first,
realistically,
when I was like the pregame, I saw that Vangioni was coming in for Calabria. I thought that was like tactical, but then it made sense that obviously it was like an injury kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Kuchka was available for that game. No, he wasn't. Okay, so if he was, obviously that was someone I would love to have seen that game to compete with the grit of like
Nainggolan.
Exactly, of a Nainggolan. So that kind of hurt us, but obviously that's not Montella's fault. For this game, if there was only one real change, because I like that Lapadula started. That was the type of game where you needed him with that grit in there at the top. So I like that. The only thing I would kind of say is I would have probably given Locatelli the start for this one instead of Sosa, and then if Locatelli kind of bottled the first half, then I would have thrown Sosa in there. But other than that, I didn't really have a problem with it, just because I'm looking at Montella's perspective and seeing the guys he has available. Like he didn't have a Kuchka, for example. A big game like this, you'd love to have a Romagnoli and a Bonaventura. Obviously, can't do nothing about that. So I think a lot of people kind of forget about those injuries, because I even see people tweeting like, "Oh, these are the guys we need to keep next year," and I see people even forgetting to add Bonaventura just because he's been out for so long. We're getting used to not having him. So again, you can't fault Montella for that. So at the end of the day, he's kind of having to work with what he has, and it's not much. And even with the guys that we're missing, it's still not that much. So I can't really fault him. The only thing I would say is I would have probably given Locatelli the start, especially since he's been benched or starting off the bench last couple games, just to see if he would kind of prove himself in a way. But other than that, I didn't really have much of a problem expecting, since I wasn't really expecting the team to go out and really dominate or win this game. So I didn't have that much of a problem with it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, I totally agree. And, I love Manuel Locatelli. I think he has a really bright future. But some fans need to realize he's not the second coming of Andreas Iniesta right now. Like, I said this last podcast too. There's some people on Twitter that it's like they think that Locatelli's going to come in and we're going to win 5-0. Like, it's not going to change that much. Like, I don't know. It's just me. But Frank, what do you think?
I think Montella's lineup was pretty much made for him, unfortunately. And Mike, you touched on it with the injuries, and I'm in agreement with Mike. I would have preferred Locatelli over Mati.
Or him too.
Would have probably been the only way to do this. I think the Calabria benching was necessary. I don't think he's ready for this level yet. I mean, I still have images of him being toyed with by Perisic in the derby just a few weeks ago. And you look at the rest of it, I mean, Sosa has put in some decent performances. It looks like he's looked to kind of be that deep lying guy, to help them keep the ball. I would have preferred Locatelli's box-to-box energy over Mati. Would it have changed the result? No, I don't think so. Pasalic is a pretty good player. He's a loanee, but he's demonstrated in these big games to have the yips, in the opening minutes. And he needs time to come into the game, and that was evident here on Sunday. And then he scores a goal. So there's really not much more that Montella can do. He's playing the hand that he's been dealt. And as far as Montella overall, I mean, I talked about this being a watered down team, just because of the ownership changes, and he's been tasked with making chicken salad out of chicken, what. I don't know if you can cuss on your podcast or not. So, long story short, his lineup was, his hand was forced. I mean, he really couldn't play anything other than this. And like I said, I would have probably gone Locatelli over Mati, and that's about it.
Yeah, no. To be honest with you, I like Mati Fernandez. I like Mati Fernandez. I think he's actually better than all the other midfielders. He never loses the ball. I don't know. I guess maybe people are 50-50 on it, but I actually really, really like Mati Fernandez. I think he's a player that could stay in the depth and with depth next season. Because if you really look at Mati Fernandez, if he played with good midfielders, he'd be way better. With Mati Fernandez plays with Pasalic and Sosa, he's obviously not going to look great. But Mati Fernandez is not a bad player. He's actually he's an experienced Serie A. I don't know. I'm a fan of Mati Fernandez. I don't know. When he's healthy, I won't even mind seeing him as a depth guy, just a depth guy next year, compared to I like him over Bertolacci. Bertolacci actually was good when he came on, though. He was actually good. He had a nice shot, just went wide, So yeah. I don't actually mind it. But obviously the midfield needs work. It's needed work since freaking Clarence Seedorf left. And it's tough because you win the middle, you win the game, right? You win the middle of the field, you win the game. The middle of the field links up your defense and forwards, right? So you need a good midfield. You look at, like I said last podcast, you look at all the top sides. The Champions League, they all have a good midfield. So you look at Real Madrid, you look at Juve. I tweeted this yesterday. Juve, Khedira gets injured, and they put Marquisio on.
Yep.
Like some depth, that is.
Well, I mean, when you're making a comparison to a team that has guys that have, not only have had experience at very high levels, but they've all played together, versus this Milan midfield who, I know Sosa has some experience. I know Mati has some experience. Pasalic is relatively young, but how many games have those three guys played together?
No, you're right.
So
you're right, and injuries come into play with that. Yeah, and you know what? And it's injuries, suspensions, players being unavailable. It's just it's tough. But that was good. We're gonna. I think we have maybe like 10 minutes left, maybe a little bit, 12 minutes left. Let me check here. Hold on. Here we got 10 minutes left. We got 10 minutes left for our max. So let's talk. We were going to talk about the Europa League race, but everybody knows we're against Inter. Inter and Fiorentina are the competitors. We're 3 points up on both of them for the sixth spot qualifies. So basically, if we beat Atalanta, if we win 2 of the 3 games, we guarantee 6th spot for ourselves. That's correct, right?
I think it is correct.
If we go 2-1, we're good. Fiorentina have a very hard schedule. They play Lazio and Napoli in the last 3 games.
I wouldn't necessarily even worry about them. I think
no, I wouldn't.
If let's just say both Milan and Inter haven't bottled the last couple 3-4 games and like they kind of got like maybe a 1 or 2 wins each, Fiorentina wouldn't have even been in the discussion right now. It's just because Inter's kind of been slacking recently. That's kind of why I think they're like tied. Or else if there was more of a balance, I think Inter, if we wouldn't be talking about Fiorentina.
I think 6th position here in Serie A is going to be one that's just going to be backed into. I don't think anyone's really fighting for it. I think you're weighing up, do you want to play that qualifier late July, early August, and now the coach is calling you in at the beginning of July instead of July 10th to do your preseason training so that you get enough repetition and your holidays are cut short and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
There's all these elements that go with being in 6th in the qualifying round that you have to play, and it seems like Milan, Inter, and Fiorentina are all just they're trying to get out of it. Really,
it seems like it really seems.
And it's funny because like as a Milan fan, like we've obviously we're Champions League prone, but like at the same time, like how we mentioned in other podcasts, like, the step to get back to Champions League, try and go in the Europa League and then like see what you can do from there and take that next step. It's funny because like at this point, like I just want to see Milan play in a European competition again. In the 1 year that we actually have the chance to actually make it, they don't even want it. That's what I find the most ironic thing. And it's going along with what Frank said. Like a lot of people are like, because I've tweeted this theory up before and I've seen a lot of people like starting to go along with it. Like, the Chinese tour, like think about it, both Milan and Inter are now Chinese owned respectively. So that's a huge thing as an owner. If you're just buying, it's like when you buy a new car, like what's the first thing you're gonna do? You're gonna go show it off to your friends, your family and stuff like that. The same thing with Chinese owners. They want to bring their team back to the homeland and show off like this is what we purchased, and obviously it's a big revenue thing. And going along with what Frank said as well, a lot of people don't realize that, this as a player, you want a vacation as well. You're starting right away with Europa League qualifying. You're starting right away. They're not getting that nice little break. And the Serie A season starting even earlier this year because they have to compensate for the World Cup next summer. So a lot of people don't put these factors into perspective. And there's kind of a reason why this theory keeps on hindering around that. And it's kind of evident now that all 3 teams don't really want it, especially Milan and Inter having to go to that Chinese tour. So I can understand why they're trying to not get it. But at the same time, it kind of sucks as a fan because you want to see your team play. The only thing is for Europa League, a lot of people again forget that is Europa League is played on a Thursday, meaning that you're only going to get a couple days rest until your next Serie A match, which will sometimes have to be pushed to a Monday. So a lot of people don't think about that as well because Champions League is Tuesday and Wednesday.
Luca, right now Milan sits 6th, and I actually think Milan are going to finish 6th.
Hope so.
I think, and it's not going to be because they avoided it and Inter and Fiorentina avoided it, but you talked about Fiorentina's schedule. Milan's running at Atalanta and then home against Bologna and then away to Cagliari. But now Inter have just sacked Pioli.
That's interesting. I didn't think that was. Why would they? Like, what's the point of sacking a coach with 3 games left? What's the point of that?
Because it's Inter. It's Inter.
Yeah,
and here's why. It's and the timing with which they did it. oh, let's sack Pioli here. There's 5 minutes left in Juventus' Champions League game. Let's sack Pioli now. No one's going to notice. Everybody's going to be all in euphoria about Juve reaching the Champions League final. We'll fly under the radar, and no one will make a big deal out of it.
That wasn't the case at all.
No, not at all.
And I think that even just shows more how much they don't want Europa League as well. Because really, what was the difference? I think they're just trying to make it. I think they just made it even more obvious that they don't even want it, sacking him.
Well, they don't. Well, Inter's season has been much more disappointing than ours. We spent 20 million euros on average players. They spent over 100 million euros on players they thought were going to be world class for them. They weren't.
I mean, to my point, we're a very watered down team right now, and
we are.
Inter loaded up and should be in the top. There's no excuse for them not being in the top three.
Well, top four at least. Top four at least.
Yeah.
At least top four. Lazio has a really good squad, and they're playing really well, but scoring 7 goals. But no, yeah, and it's tough. But I think it's in our own hands. It's still in our own hands. Genoa beat Inter, Fiorentina tied. It's in our own hands. We win, we're in. I want us to play. I want to watch us play during the week next week. I want to see us on. I don't want to I stream games. I can watch them on HGTV. I want that. I want to watch them next year. I want to come home from school and watch them in the week.
I agree.
And you can go from work too. You want to watch them not just on the weekend. So hopefully they can do that. So let's close it out in the last few minutes with some mercato talk. Just saw on Twitter right now. So Mirabelli just had a meeting at Casa Milan with the Torino sporting director. I don't know if you guys read that.
Yeah, I was just looking at that.
Yeah, so they discussed Zappacosta, Baselli, Poli, because Poli's been rumored to go there. And they also talked about Belotti, and Calcio Mercato released apparently that Torino told them the price for Belotti. And Torino want 100 million euros for Andrea Belotti's services.
Just to add on to that, just one thing that's a little bit kind of thrown into the Belotti thing. Also, Han Lee was also present at the meeting as well, which is something that isn't really normal to have. I know obviously the other guy is the owner as well, Young Han Lee, but I think David Han Lee has high up rankings as well. So to have that kind of a presence in that kind of meeting as well, I wouldn't think it would be normally for a guy like Zappacosta or Baselli. I think that kind of was there for a pitch at Belotti. But at the same time, I'm not trying to jump to conclusions. I don't think it'll really happen. I'd love for it to happen, but it's just too hard. But at the same time, you hear a lot of opinions and stuff on Twitter. Cairo, as we know, remember when we had Cerci, Turbe, guys like that, he lists these high prices, but he's trying to get that high offer. I'll be honest, I love Belotti. I'd love to see him on Milan. He's a Milan guy, but no one's gonna pay $100 million for him because he could very well be one of those guys who just a one and done season and then he's not gonna do anything. So I think Kaido's kind of shooting for the stars and trying to rip someone off, and I don't think anyone's gonna offer that. And throughout the summer, I think he's gonna start lowering that price. And to be honest, I'm seeing some things, and if we can offer 60 million, and I know Mihailovic has a boy crush on a guy like Kuchka and Poli. If we can maybe give him one of those guys with a couple of $1 million around that range, I wouldn't rule us out getting Belotti, to be honest with you.
No, yeah, and just for other striker talk, yesterday, Sky, which is most reliable in my opinion, they said that Real Madrid want 60 million for Morata. You want 60 million euros? That's his price. I mean, if I'd buy Morata, to be honest with you.
I love Belotti, but I low-key kind of put Morata just on top of Belotti.
Maybe because he scores so many, and he's playing on a big stage and he's scoring too.
And also, he's one of those guys Belotti, obviously he's a crazy goal scorer, but I kind of fear that because obviously in comparison to Milan's midfield to Torino's, he's getting service. And not that we aren't going to buy midfielders, because I think we will, but I feel like sometimes he's not one of those guys who can kind of create on his own. I might be wrong, but I don't feel like he has to be created for. I think Morata's, I've seen him at Juve and seen him at Madrid. He's kind of one of those guys, if nothing, he's not getting service or whatever, he kind of takes the ball and creates on his own and scores on his own sometimes. So that's kind of where I give the edge on Morata. But at the end of the day, having one or the other, it really doesn't matter for me. I'd just be thrilled to have a proven, proper young striker.
No, yeah, and Morata's young too.
Yeah, he's only 24, so.
Yeah,
the Italian in me says I'd rather have Belotti.
Of course.
Yeah, no, of course. And he's a Milan fan as well, so.
Ital Milan.
Yeah.
Ital Milan.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and so the friggin' De Sciglio situation still hasn't.
He's going to Juve.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's going. He's going.
Yeah,
But
if
is he going?
goes to Juve, he's dead to me.
But why? I mean, Dani Alves is going to be there for another season. I don't know if, unless Juve plans to part with Lichtsteiner, Alessandro is going to be there for a few years.
Yeah, that's kind of what I don't understand. You bring up a good point. Like, it's not like if they didn't have Alexandro, then I can understand. But they have them. They also have Lichtsteiner. You know, they have multiple guys because they're a deep team. So, like, it kind of confuses me why he's being linked.
Yeah, no, and I don't know. He'll play right back probably, right?
Potentially.
But Dani Alves is there.
Yeah, Dani Alves is doing wonderful stuff right now.
Unless he's going to be a bench player for him.
If he's going to get a lot of money to just sit and watch Dani Alves play, it's not going to, and he wants to do that, then, all the best. But
it's better for us.
Whatever, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so we're gonna wrap things up here, guys. We're about 40 minutes. We've been talking for about 40 minutes. So we discussed the Roma Milan game, the lineups in Montella and injuries, and we discussed a little bit of the Europa League race and mercato. So, guys, this is our live viewers. We thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And if you want to watch it all later, it's going to be on YouTube right away. So, drop a like, drop a comment, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Mike and I were really trying to be consistent with this. So, thank you so much for the viewers. Frank, thanks so much for being a special guest here today. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure to be on. If you don't mind me promoting the Serie A Sit Down pod, we're on World Football Index. Look up Serie A Sit Down, worldfootballindex.com. Look for Serie A Sit Down. We have a weekly pod. We have a guest panelist, normally a writer overseas. We've had Luca on. We've had the guys from Italian Football TV on. So we get everybody on. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, and we'll give you a shout out right like after the episode. I'll tweet it and say follow you guys too. If you have to follow Frank, it's at FTC_21. If you have to follow Mike, is it TMG Mike?
Mike TMG 5.
Mike TMG 5. If you want to follow me, it's Luca _LaPorta. And drop a like, drop a retweet. Really appreciate you guys listening. And this Saturday, Milan-Atalanta, Forza Milan. Ciao ragazzi, ciao.
Ciao.
Forza Milan.